If you are a product manager, especially in India, you're probably going through a crisis of faith and existence. As a career, product management in India has gone through multiple eras. In the early days, PMs struggled to explain to people what they actually did. Think about all the people you'd imagine who work at a software company: marketing, engineering, sales, analytics, design. You can explain what each of them do to your grandmother. But the one exception to this rule is product management. It's the only function where the people who do it struggle to explain to their parents or even grandparents what they actually do. Suddenly, there was a gold rush where everyone wanted to become a product manager. And now there's an existential crisis, partly driven by reduced funding for startups, increased attrition, the rise of AI, and the changing nature of products themselves. Every day, more and more leaders are asking the question that we are all thinking: do we even need product managers? My name is Praveen Gopalkrishnan, and I used to be a product manager too. In today's episode of 2x2, along with my co host Rohin Dharmakumar and two incredible, accomplished product leaders, we trace the origin, the evolution, and the crisis that product management as a career faces in India. We try to figure out why and how product management became a science and stopped becoming an art. We try to answer what makes for a great product manager and how to find them. And we even ask the question that leaders are asking themselves: do we need product managers at all?
Hello, this is Hari, the podcast producer for 2x2. Before we jump into the discussion, I just wanted to let our listeners know that this episode of 2x2 was recorded fully remotely. So you might notice that the audio quality isn't up to the mark as our usual episodes. We're sorry about the inconvenience, but I promise you we've done our best to make it a pleasant listening experience. Okay, with that out of the way, I'll let you get back to the episode.
I'm going to ask my two guests their favorite and most creative answer to: what does a product manager do? Shreyas.
Putting my very serious face on, product managers are mini CEOs.
Is that a serious
which
answer?
begs the question: what does a CEO do?
So, I mean, the serious answer is product managers are orchestrators of multiple different roles in technology companies where they try to amplify what their core competency is. Okay, different product managers have different core competencies. There are some product managers whose core competency is tech. For instance, I am a tech first product manager because I became a programmer first. I wrote code for most of my life. My first startup, I wrote the code and I was a product manager and I was the CEO. Okay, so my sense of product always comes from, okay, what is needed to be done plus what can be done because I understand a little bit of tech. Okay, so product managers are orchestrators. They bring multiple people together and they try to amplify what their core competency is.
That's Shreyas Srinivasan. Shreyas is the Chief Product Officer at Paytm, where he heads their consumer products, which is one of India's oldest product and fintech companies. He's also the founder of Paytm Insider. And as many of our listeners know, Paytm Insider is a platform that lets you discover and buy tickets and events and discover what's going on in your city in sports, travel, and food. Shreyas is also an expert in acquisitions because Insider has been acquired twice, first by Paytm in 2017 and now recently acquired by Zomato. So because he's not just a chief product officer, he's also a founder. I think his views is quite relevant to what we're going to discuss today about the future of product management itself. Now, for a long time, product management used to be a somewhat esoteric profession, as Shreyas kind of explained. Then, about 10 to 12 years ago, something changed. Suddenly, it seemed everybody wanted to be a product manager. People were leaving investment banking, consulting, marketing, analytics, business, design, engineering, and rushing into product management. Our LinkedIn inboxes were full of people asking us, how do I become a product manager? And as products started to become front and center into our lives, in the food that we ordered, in the rides that we took, in the payments that we made, and the purchases that we made online, product managers became much more important. And more importantly, they became cool, not just for people, but even for companies and for startups. And so I'm going to ask my second guest, Chandra. When did you first notice this change in product management, given that you've been doing this for quite some time?
Wait. Just before Chandra, you answer that. PGK, you had asked both guests to define product management. So I think Chandra should probably give us his definition as well before he jumps to the second answer.
Go for it, Chandra.
It's actually it's uh, at the risk of sounding irreverent. This is an existential question that pops up every year, right? When you meet your best buddies for drinks, they ask you, "What do you do?" Like I don't know what's the in trend definition of what I do. So I'll give you an answer that at least seems to be working with friends who are ruthless, right? Who'll judge you at the drop of a hat. The definition that seems to be working, and this is borrowed from some guest on a different podcast by Lenny, was product managers or individuals who are expected to do product. Could be classical product managers, could be engineering guys, could be designers. They are converting the potential energy of a bunch of people at a place, at a team, at a company into kinetic energy. And somewhere that definition seems to resonate, seems to not result in a lot of follow-up questions for which you honestly don't have answers. And seems to be a good segue into saying, okay, now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's move on to the next question in life, right? So I would put it that way. Anyone, individual or bunch of individuals who are helping convert the capabilities, the potential energy of individuals into some outcome, could be corporate success, could be product success, could be both, is what I would loosely equate to product management.
Chandra, I just have a question. Nowadays. Have you ever tried this as a party conversation opener when someone asks you, what do you do? And you say, I'm an energy converter.
Yeah, Chandra, you had all the right words, but you missed entropy.
Oh damn! This so maybe and in the world where content is essentially transformed, this becomes my version of product, right? So you take something from Shreyas, entropy from Shreyas, and Rohit's party trick, and that's the new definition of product. So maybe that's the theme for October.
Yeah.
Fine. Yeah, but you should talk about the change in this profession and career over the last 10 years.
I'll possibly try answering that from a vantage point, right? Seasons as I've seen it. And I'll start with my own experience out of college, right? Business school, did engineering, could do engineering decently well, but then didn't want to do it for a living, right? So in that set intersection of can do engineering, but maybe doesn't want to do it for a lifetime, wants to be close to tech and building stuff, and derives his joy from building stuff. It was a very natural choice, right? And I would say even as much as I was picking that job at that point in time, there was also honestly a very clear belief that the shelf life of the role was no more than 5 years. In fact, I was visiting my alma mater. Someone asked, saying, and they asked this question, exact same question, right? What's the shelf life of a product manager? I said, honestly speaking, when I picked it up, it was like, let's flip this career as soon as possible, right? Before people realize we don't do any real work. You go do some real work like sales or marketing or whatever. So that was the first vantage point of product, like making my own career choice. And then somewhere around 8-10 years or maybe 14 years was this gold rush, right? Like everyone, and it used to be very fascinating. You would go possibly visit colleges, like you said, your LinkedIn inboxes would be exploding with saying people, I want to do product, and you're scratching your head and say, I haven't, for the love of God, figured out what this role does. And there still seems to be a lot of people who want to be in, right? So I don't know, maybe I can't understand it, but there are lots of people who seem to be wanting to do it.
That's Chandrasekhar Vattikutty, Chief Product Officer of India's first unicorn InMobi, where he also doubles up as the SVP of InMobi's telco cloud business. Chandra, as I'll call him for the rest of this episode, has been a product leader for nearly 20 years at companies like Yahoo, Microsoft, and of course, InMobi. Chandra isn't just a product person, he does both product and business, which you'll find out is super important for the rest of this conversation. So, to step back, nobody knew what a PM did. Then, as things exploded, everybody wanted to become product managers and hire product managers. Product management today is one of the world's most important professions. It's the function that decides how the products that we use for hours every day look, feel, and behave. Last June, Brian Chesky, CEO and founder of Airbnb, said in a conference that Airbnb had, and I quote, got rid of the classic product management function. One founder and CEO of a major Indian consumer tech company told me, and I quote, 90% of the product management jobs are redundant and can be picked up by either engineering, analytics, operations, designer, whoever finds it the most fun to do,
Damn, he
without
didn't say
needing
AI.
without needing this one more person in the team unnecessarily. And now I bring in my co-host Rohin, who has a lot of views about this. Rohin, as another founder, another CEO, do you have similar views like Brian Chesky and all these other founders that product management is just a waste of
fully.
time?
And it stems from my frustration at being unable to find good product managers. And I'm only half joking, right? Because in this last 10 years of the bubble, ZERP era, or VCs, what has happened is product managers got elevated, they got priced out of the market, they got out of whack, they became very desirable. And I think what I also feel is that, I just find very few people who are genuinely interested in building products and actually, doing it in smaller organizations. So it's just become this very climb the ladder, move on to the next thing, wider portfolio.
I'll talk a little bit about a survey that I did with product managers on my newsletter a couple of weeks back, where I surveyed 1,000 plus product managers. So here is a question I asked product managers. Okay, I said here is a statement. I said go from 1 to 10, 1 being strongly disagree, 5 being agree. And the statement is, I believe that talking to users and getting their feedback is how great products are built. On an average, this is 4. Almost like overwhelmingly, people went all the way to the right. However,
Everyone is Steve Jobs.
everyone, well, yes. But on the other hand, data is slightly different. Again, I had another statement that said, I believe that analyzing data and tracking metrics are how great products are built. And here the average is 3.4. So I think there is some kind of a realization within product managers as well that, yeah, limits of data. Like data used to be this really cherished thing. I always had this joke that every organization had this like motto called we do data driven decision making, as though there is some other kind of decision making. So that is something that now is slowly being confronted. I think we'll talk a little bit about data. What's happening inside companies? Is all of this explosion of data, what is it doing to this function?
So I think Jeff Bezos has a great quote, which is one of my personal favorite quotes. He's saying, "Given a choice between anecdotes and data, I always go with anecdotes," right? Which is a brilliant practitioner quote, right? It's like to me, um, especially large companies, and again, like signaling gets mixed when there is numbers in view, right? If you're serving a trillion ad impressions a day, if you're doing 100 million transactions a day, right? Like there's a lot of mixed signals in the data, and then it almost becomes a canvas for the storyteller, right? Because it's about cohorting the data the way you want to justify a story you're trying to say. But good anecdotes, especially when they get to sizable number, right? And again, like we talked a bit about, everyone says they should talk to their users 100%, but you should talk to your users about the right things, right? Like you should not ask your users what they would like, right? Like that's the standard one. Like the one thing I always say in all my meetings is the customer owns the solution. The customer owns the problem. You own the solution, right? So please talk to as many people as you want. Please talk to everyone everywhere, but only about the problem. Please do not talk about the solution because then you'll just confuse yourself no end, right? And second, with data, I think data has an arc, right? And I talk about consumer products. That's what I understand well. In consumer products, a lot of time, I think the problem is we look at data which is short-lived, but consumers tend to have very long memory. For instance, assume that you put a pop-up on screen, right? And after, a week after you put a pop-up, some number went up, right? Total number of sales of this product with gross margin 25% went up 6.5%, but retention was not affected. Everyone's like, yay, we unlocked 6.5% additional revenue, retention is not up. Except 4.5 months later, we see a drop in retention. Okay. Now that experiment is long gone, whatever. Now nobody can justify why this retention number goes down. Some user, a UX person will stand up and say, this is because you put a pop-up. The business person will say, no, this is not. We ran an experiment. He'll point to the product manager. The product manager will say, here's my W0, W1, W2, W3 cohort. Look, there is no retention problem. Okay. Where do
W
you
being
go?
week 1, week 2, week 3,
Yeah,
week 4.
week one,
Yes.
week two, week three, week four cohort, there is no problem. Where do you go from here? Right? Like, and that's where more than artistry, somebody said customer empathy, right? I think that backbone is very important. Is being able to stand up and say, hey, listen, we're in the service of somebody. We are doing this to hopefully make an impact in a very small, tiny impact in somebody's life somewhere. That is sacrosanct to me. That is like a lever I won't move too much too far either way. I need to balance the company and its interest, but I also need to manage the user and his interest. That backbone I would like to see in product managers.
But that is precisely art. That is exactly the
No,
thing that
that's
cannot
not
be
art.
measured.
That's
Okay.
conviction.
It's
Okay,
Artists,
fine.
how many artists do you know have a lot of conviction?
Oh, please.
so maybe it's just on the data one, and then on this comment on bridging the gap between the extremes, right? There is hard bureaucrat behavior, pure artist behavior, unencumbered by reality. And somewhere the truth is in the middle, right? You get the scientists to be a bit more fun loving, right? Like you invent metrics that are completely impossible to measure, right? Like smiles per now or whatever shit you can think of. Like maybe just coming on data, right? Just from a vantage point, I think organizations are drowning in data, but struggling with the reality that they are not any more wiser. They don't know the intuition of what is happening, right? And there are, like Shreya said, right, there are so many layers. There is a time delay aspect. You do something, you measure for one day, it's an excess. Some person will disbelieve. They say, no, let's look at the effect for 1 month. They say, okay, it's still a success. And then you've kind of, maybe the ecosystem has changed, the product proposition has changed, strategy changed, operations went for a toss for 1 month, metrics go down, and by that time it's been sold. In the food chain, it's been sold as a success. People have moved on to a new shiny toy. They've gotten their PM2 to see a SPM. Director has gotten his director to senior director. Everyone's moved on. You tick all the boxes, right? You tick the boxes of conformist product management and product development. So as we looked at data was good, numbers were good. No one bailed on us. Everyone goes home happy. And at the end of 6 months, you're still scratching your head. Said, I can't put my pulse on what happened, but we didn't make progress, and that is eating a lot of people, right? Like product leadership, engineering leadership. I mean, everyone's smart, competent individuals, right? Deep down, after 2 drinks, most people speak the truth, and they suffer. They say we did everything right, but I don't get a comfort or a sense that we did the right thing, or we are better off than where we were 6 months ago.
I mean, you're also saying the same thing. This is intuition. This is art. I mean, Shreyas is talking in terms of
Yes.
conviction, which my view is conviction is a form of art when you can't measure it. And similarly, you're saying something really similar here.
which is why, like all true things product, right? My belief is that we'll end somewhere in that spectrum, right? You could say, pardon the political leanings. You could say I'm left of center, you are right of center. Maybe you are the artist. You're closer
Maybe
to
we're
the
just
artist.
shifting the Overton window towards the right.
It could be. I mean, and maybe there is, like, if you were to ask me, is there a need to shift that window towards the light, right? Just in terms of a spectrum, say if left is scientist and right is artist, is there an intrinsic need to push the window very aggressively towards the artist so that you kind of delayer, remove some of these behaviors? Absolutely, right? Point on. Should there be no Democrat or no bureaucrat or no this thing? Pardon my Democrat references, too much election stuff going on right now in US. But should there be no bureaucrat slash whatever scientist tone to it? Maybe not. But today, if you were to ask me deep down, I would say there is a need to push aggressively to the right, because it's that same thing, right? You
Right
see
being?
tranches to the artistic side. Sorry, not to
Oh,
the
thank
right.
you.
The artistic side. Because deep down, the more conversations I have, right, with friends, colleagues, batchmates who are in the same domain, and even across different domains, right, be it engineering, be it design, be it manufacturing. Uh, with more data comes the curse that you feel good that you're doing the right thing. It also comes with the curse that you're not any wiser.
Again, I'll go back to the survey that I did. There is this thing that I did very famously that all product managers now obsessed with, since we're talking about data, called NPS score, which stands for Net Promoter Score, where what they do is that you go to your users and say, would you recommend this product to your friends or people like that? And on a scale of 1 to 10. So I went and did a very meta thing. I went back to product managers and said, would you recommend a career in product management to people around you? Like, could be your friends, could be other people around you. And the net promoter score that we got is actually a score of 10. So I'll explain what this means. What this means is that you can ask people to choose between a scale of 1 to 10. Anyone who chooses 9 or 10 are what you call promoters. These are people who say, yes, I would absolutely, unfailingly recommend this to people. And anybody who chooses between 1 to 5 or 1 to 6 are what you call detractors, where they say, no, I would not recommend this. So if you subtract your promoters from your detractors, you generally get this measure called net promoter score, which in this case is 10. I don't have to say this, but this is actually shockingly bad, which means that there are just 10 percentage points people who say that I would recommend this as a career over others. So where do what's how do we bring this back? Even if we disagree with the premise that artists, scientists, etc., there's going to be a healthy balance. Where is this going to come from? How are we going to make product management great again for people? What does it take for it to go much, much higher? What must change? And where do we expect it to come from?
Wait, sorry. I mean, I just have a clarifying question. When you say how do we make product management great again for people, are we talking about making product management great again for product managers? Are we talking about making product management great again for companies to hire, for users? Like for who?
So, thank you. That is a great question, Rohan. I have a slightly um, a romanticized view of we are all in the altar of building something nice, it's building something useful. Okay, I think the question of making product managers great again should happen in the context of building better products, right? It should not be self-serving to product managers. That doesn't help anyone,
Okay.
right? So the real question is, how do we build better products,
Okay.
right?
Go on.
And what do product managers need to do to build better products? I think that's a better question. Um, I think fundamentally one of the things which is we are sort of always cyclic. It's a sinusoidal curve of complexity and simplicity in almost every building process. I think we have peaked on the complexity. I think newer tools will simplify product development, right? I think it's for everyone to see, right, what's happening with, say, code gen, what's happening with a lot of that. It's and automated testing, right? It will simplify a lot of the building process, which means that we have more time to really distill and have a sense of understanding of what would make customers' lives better, right? And one of the big parts of that is this moving away from platforms which cohortize customers into buckets of 5 million to be able to build products and
What does that
systems.
mean?
So if you run any big app, right, almost everyone builds for cohorts of users, right? Because you can't build for any user anymore. It's just too complicated. So somebody does a cohort which says users who open our app more than 20 times and do 30 transactions greater than 10,000, we see this as an opportunity for them. And a lot of thinking happens around that, right? Around this should be our strategy to send push notifications to them. This should be our reach out strategy to them. This should be the way we communicate offers to them. This should be their homepage, blah, blah, blah.
And why do you say that's in some senses holding things back?
Because it diminishes the product experience, right?
Why? I mean, just again, I'm asking the
Because
obvious questions. I did warn you.
you're bucketed in a segment you most likely don't belong to, right? Or you're bucketed in a segment which has generalized you enough to be bucketed in that segment, right? It goes back, like there's almost every big, again, I talk about consumer products, I don't understand the B2B side of things, but in most consumer products, product talks have a big component of customer relationship management, like a CRM. Most of these CRMs with data have moved into models, which sort of like group and ungroup various cohorts of users, and you build strategy on those cohorts, right? And I think of like a
So
big,
you're saying it's in some senses. I'm sorry to interrupt you. You're saying that everyone is operating on some kind of one step, two step derived views of users and not the real users.
it is very
They're being
hard to,
filtered and
yeah,
refiltered and refiltered.
it's very hard to really design for an actual user, because today our technology systems truly don't give us the ability to build it with including business, right? Obviously you can technology, you can build something which is right like pixel targeted to each user. We could do it today, but it does not work in the context of business delivery, right? It does not work in the context of delivering an EBITDA number, a PAT number, a revenue number, and so on and so forth. And I think like building better products will innately means building systems which really understand a user well, right? On a single, I mean, on a unit level of single user, right? Like I know Rohin does not like pop-ups this way. I know Rohin does opens his app at 4 p.m. on
Isn't that like
Tuesday.
some kind of holy grail? Like, I mean,
It is.
isn't it like just too complex to be able to? I mean, I get that it's like an ideal worth aspiring to,
Yeah.
but for any product at scale, isn't that virtually impossible to kind of do?
No, I mean it was to a large extent. I think it won't be in the next 2 3 years.
AI.
Actually, that might be one of the good things for AI. It's one of the few things for AI.
It's just going to cook up customers and tell you stuff that doesn't exist. Fine. I'll take
That's
that
another
joke back.
podcast. That's another podcast. We should have that. But genuinely, I think product experience means UI, UX, marketing, communication, outreach, customer support, right? Like design. So products not. Yeah.
Shares. You mentioned a bunch of functions. It gives me a question that I want to ask, and I want to ask this to Chandra too, which is, if you had a team of product managers, designers, marketing folks, engineers, etc., and stuff like that, and you had to let go of the product manager, who would you ask to step into their place?
They are going to say it depends, but we'll still get
like
past
They
that.
can't. You can't say it depends. Like,
PGK nailed it. I mean, at the risk of sounding cliched, if there are individuals who can fill in that vacuum and who don't believe that it sucks energy off of them, that person would be the natural choice, right? It could be a designer, it could be the analyst, it could be the engineer, it could be the engineering manager, right? Because at some point, it all boils down to set pieces. I've had instances where an engineering manager had said beyond marshalling resources, I want more meaning to my work, right? And my team's work. Can I influence what is the end outcome
Be
that
careful
happens,
what you
right?
ask for.
Yeah, so I would say it depends, like the
Got it.
classical product answer, but it's very context dependent in terms of who's able to fill in that vacuum, and do it
All
in a
right.
manner that does not make them worse off in their core function.
Sure.
But can I just like reverse that lens from the outside and say, what would it take? Because I can genuinely say that the demand for product managers um, is not what it is like, today, what it was maybe 3, 4 years ago. It's definitely, and by that I mean that it's definitely down. So, is that the new normal? Or are you really asking that what will it take to make that the role of the product manager so sexy again that everybody's talking about, man, where can I hire 2 more product managers? And like, I just can't have enough product managers in my company because they're absolutely killing it and doing orthogonal stuff and all of that. Will that happen?
So Rohan, again, slightly longer term view. It took us reasonably 4 years of formal education to be somewhat good at technology in terms of understanding the various stack elements, and 90% of what we learned we have never used in our lives, right? Like nobody remembers the 7-layer TCP/IP stack, even though you studied it for all your life. Uh, One of the questions I asked a lot of engineers when I interviewed them is, how does the internet work? Very, very, very few people even know how the internet works, right? Abstraction is a true form of life. We have abstracted more and more and more and more and more every decade of our lives, and will continue to abstract, which means a bunch of these functions will merge, right? I actually, 4 or 5 years from now, I wouldn't be surprised if there's one person who does engineering, product, and design. It is not impossible.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't matter whether you want to call him product manager or you want to call him engineer or you want to call him designer. We can let Brian Chesky decide. Uh, but the truth is that we are going to a place where all that matters is, are you able to give out a creative output or solve a business challenge? And if you're trained to be able to solve it by yourself, right? Which honestly, after using Cursor, I've been playing around with Cursor for the last 2 weeks, right? If I needed 20 engineers before, I can tell you I need two. And I need two engineers who sort of get context. They
Sorry,
have a
what's cursor?
Cursor AI is this new code editor,
Mm.
which sort of integrates all the LLM code gens into your sort of like development process,
Got it.
right? So you can add a prompt and it modifies your code. You can run it in line, like literally. So when I was playing around with it, I needed a sense of vision. What did I want to build? I needed a sense of taste. I was like, okay, what color, what format, what, and I needed a sense of, okay, speed, how much time, blah 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 blah, right? I think there'll be one person who can sort of like deliver a lot of things end to end, and that person, because we abstract so much, will be able to learn all of that in 4 years.
The 10x product manager. If you'd like to listen to everything we talked about, you can do it either with a premium subscription to the Ken and then downloading our app, or by subscribing to 2x2 Premium on Apple Podcasts. Of course, you could also wait 4 weeks because we do usually make full episodes available for a while after that. Whatever you choose, we're just glad to have you as a listener. And if you enjoyed listening to this episode or have some thoughts that you'd like to share with us, you can always write to us at 2x2@theken.com. We'll be back next week with a new episode for you.